Hi, good morning. Welcome to Sunday Tea. My name is Tara Alexis and I'm the founder of the non-profit organisation Mothers of Angels for women who have experienced pregnancy and baby loss. Just want to say thank you so much to everyone for attending and for signing up for this event. I understand that for some it would have taken a lot of courage to do that this Sunday morning. So we just want to say that we appreciate you and that we're very happy to have you joining us this morning. So our mission as Mothers of Angels is to create a safe space to acknowledge and to honour all women who've experienced pregnancy and baby loss. And we're very kindly been supported by Sands Charity. And we have today with us Ksavi, the ambassador for Sands, and we have Bertogal as well, Minister of Music. So really looking forward to hearing from them today. Before we get started, I've got some housekeeping things to go through with you all. So first of all, please, no pressure to have your cameras on. We know it's a Sunday morning and also that it's a sensitive thing that we're going to be talking about today. So there's no pressure to have your camera on. Also, if everybody could please have their microphones muted, just to make sure there isn't any distraction or any sounds like that. Later on during the Q&A, if you have any questions, then you'll be able to take your camera off hidden if you want to, and you'll be able to unmute your microphone. Something else you'll be able to do to ask questions is to type them into the chat. You can ask them to everybody if you want and put them on the open forum, or you're welcome to send them to Laurie, who is our virtual host today, or you're welcome to send them directly to me, and then I'll be able to present them to Ksavi and to Carol, and then just to the open forum too. Okay, and also just to let you know who else is with us, we have Sarah from East Kent Sands Support Group. Sarah's going to be supporting us in the chat if you have any questions. Good morning, Jennifer. I can just see you've messaged in the chat there. And we also have our counsellor as well, Naomi from Life Care Counselling, who's going to be doing a segment towards the end of the event as well. Okay, so I think that is most of the housekeeping that I have down. Just going to tell you a little bit about the theme this year. So the theme that this year came to me, I've had quite a few women during the course of the year and after our first event last year as well, asking me regarding spirituality and faith, and it was coming up in conversations, their relationship to God during their grieving process. And I thought to myself, this is something that I personally haven't heard spoken about on a platform for a long time, actually. I'm a Christian. I had a loss myself, a late miscarriage 12 years ago. And at the time of my loss, I don't even think anybody, well, not many people, I should say, from the church I was attending knew at all. And that got me thinking as well in terms of support that is out there for whichever faith you're a part of or whatever spiritual beliefs that you have. So that probably, I would say, is one of the main reasons why I thought, actually, let's explore spirituality a bit more with relating to having a loss. We talk so much about the context of faith in our lives. We talk about it with marriage, we talk about it with our careers, we talk about it with loss, we talk about the afterlife, but very rarely do we talk about it within the context of having a pregnancy that ends with a child's loss, and also after a baby has been born, if there's a loss too. And many people reconcile life events through the lens of their faith. So today I wanted to give people a chance to do that with compassion, with sensitivity, honesty, and with care as well. Today isn't about having the right answers, it's not about having definite answers, but it's about talking and sharing and holding each other up. It's about being a light for someone if they need it, and also helping keep each other on the paths that they're on. And that is the theme as well for Baby Loss Awareness Week this year. It's Stepping Stones. So just a bit of information about Sands, who are supporting before we get started. Sands are the leading stillbirth and neonatal death charity in the UK. They exist to reduce the number of babies dying and to ensure that anyone affected by the death of a baby receives the best possible care and support for as long as they need it. Sands provides bereavement support services both nationally and through its free phone helpline, mobile app and online community and resources, and locally through a UK-wide network of around 100 support groups, which Sarah in the chat is a part of one of them as well. The charity works in partnership with healthcare professionals, trusts and health boards, and offer a range of training programs and bereavement care resources to ensure that every bereaved parent and family receives the best possible care wherever they are in the UK. Okay, and now to introduce our roundtable speakers to you again. So I will introduce them to you and then they'll both tell you a little bit about themselves, their experience of baby loss, and also the faith that they have. So first of all, we have Ksavi, who is the Sands Ambassador. Good morning.
Thank you for having me here today. So yeah, some of you may know me as Ksavi, but I prefer to sort of call myself Ksavi by my real name. I experienced baby loss a number of years ago when I had 3 miscarriages. So babies whose heartbeats we never got the chance to hear. And then Ksavi, our son, was born. He was our second son. And unfortunately, he passed away when he was nearly 8 months old. So he was, it was a case of kind of infant loss for us. And it wasn't really until his death that the miscarriages were heightened in my life, and you know, everything that was coming together I needed to sort of process through. I'm a born Hindu, practicing Hindu, and I was raised as a Hindu. I think when, you know, he died, I questioned my faith quite a bit, because I was always led to believe that if you do this, then good things happen. And then I was at a stage where I was like, well, something bad has happened, so where did I go wrong with my faith? And I feel like, although I take the aspects of Hinduism that I want to adopt in my life to help me cope through, you know, his loss and the losses of the miscarriages, I feel like I've become more spiritual, but sort of taking parts of other faiths and other religions, which maybe are much more to me around sort of reflection and mindfulness, and whether that's, you know, in the Jewish community, you know, a day of reflection that they have, whether that is Buddhism and Hinduism, thinking about reincarnation and what the afterlife might be around, and I firmly believe that there is, and that helps me cope with his loss, or whether that's, you know, going and sitting in a church and just being at peace doing that, and that's not something that I've ever done until he died. So I feel like it would be wrong of me to say I'm a dedicated believer of just Hinduism, because I think I'm a firm believer of spirituality and all faiths, and I pick and choose areas that connect to me and help me cope.
Okay, and then Carol.
Yes, so my name is Carol, and I should say myself and my husband, we went through our stillbirth in 2014. I was 40 weeks pregnant when our first son's heart stopped beating, and went through the process of induction, and 3 days later, that's when we had the stillbirth. My faith is Christian, and having faith really got us through. We believe that God always has a plan for our life, and again, just like you, I questioned, why would you let this happen to us, God, if you say you love us? But everything happens for a reason. We don't always understand why, but knowing that you have a God that loves you and cares for you and wants the best for you, that gave us the faith to move forward, you know, knowing that what happened wasn't really to harm us, but, you know, it could have been to make us stronger. I don't know, maybe we wasn't ready, who knows? We don't know why, but I believe there's a purpose for everything. People have said to us, you don't know, God maybe was hiding you or covering you from a greater pain later down the line. We don't know, but all I know is that the Bible tells us that God has good thoughts towards us, not to harm us. And this is what we held on to, that, you know, he would come through for us eventually. And yeah,
Okay.
Not to articulate it
That's
really.
okay, no, it's great, thank you.
Yeah.
I should also say as well that Carol is my sister. Sometimes people say we do look alike, sometimes people will say we don't, we look nothing like each other. So I had my loss first, and Carol was a great support to me during that. And then Carol had a loss, and we can talk about it a bit later in terms of the things that I thought after your loss kind of thing, because there was lots of things that I thought as well. But yeah, just so that you know, we are sisters as well. And any questions that you do have for Sheeta and Carol, direct them. You can start putting them in the inbox now if you want to, and you can ask directly to me, or you can ask to Laurie. Just a quick note, if you'd be able to speak up just a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
You can do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's get into it now then. So the first thing that I thought that we could discuss regarding your loss and your faith is, would you say at the beginning, and this can be at the beginning, at the middle, at the end, what was your journey? Would you say that it drew you closer to your faith and to your God and spiritual beliefs, or you drew away at the time of your loss? And then what was that journey like? Maybe you was away for a very long time. I know I personally was away for a long time, and then you came back, or maybe you're still finding your way. How was that for the two of you?
I think, looking back now, it was a very powerful moment, but I didn't realise that I'd done it then. But I do remember the day Ksavi died, coming back at midnight after, he had been taken from us and taken down to the mortuary and into the chapel to rest. And that process had been, so he died at 3:30 in the afternoon, and then he wasn't taken until 12 at midnight. And we refused to leave the hospital because I was like, I need to know my baby's okay before I leave. And he's in good care. And that was a really important part of kind of that moment when we sort of left the hospital. And there were a lot of things that went wrong during that time. And, I'm glad to say there's so many improvements that have happened in the last 7 years. And even, when you think about the last 20 years, the last 10 years, even in the last 5 years, we've made so much more progression. But I do remember coming back home, and the first thing I did is I went to the temple in my house. So I have a little area in my house, and I remember sort of praying there, crying my eyes out and saying, I don't know why you've done what you've done. I do not understand it. All I know is that, can you help to get us through this time? Because I don't know what the coming days are going to be like. And I just remember doing that, and I had no anger in me, but I wasn't peaceful either. And I just didn't understand it. I just remember not understanding it. And prior to that, I had always been led to believe that, to be a really good Hindu, you need to pray all the time, you need to do your candles at home and have God in your mind, and then good things happen to you. So I feel like I was raised with that fear around religion, that if you do good, then good happens. And then all of a sudden I was questioning, well, I was good, and then something bad happened. Why did something bad happen? Where did I go wrong? And I was looking for a reason to blame myself as to why, Ksavi was taken away from us in that way. And that, was this some kind of sick joke that, we had 3 miscarriages, and then you give me a baby, and then he's born and he's with us for 8 months, and then you take him away. Like, if you were going to take him away, why did you even give him to me, kind of thing? So I kept questioning what was the reason for him coming, and what was the reason for him dying, in that kind of way. And I stopped praying and doing candles in my temple pretty much immediately.
Wow, okay.
And I remember there were certain members in the community that knew that, or family and friends, and they were like, you should carry on doing that because it will get you through, it will get you through. And I was like, you don't have a clue what I'm going through. And I don't actually genuinely feel like I can go into my temple and light a candle. I feel like I'm a hypocrite for doing that because I don't want to do it. And I feel if I did it, then I'm not truthful to myself. And in Hinduism, there are certain sort of practices that you do, at the time of the funeral and all that kind of stuff, and it's all related to the afterlife and reincarnation and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the priest was brown and we were talking about these things, and I kept questioning, well, why do we do it? And nobody could give me an answer, like why, it's always happened in this way. I was like, no, but explain to me, explain to me. And I was more connected to my culture, probably more than my husband was. And so for my husband, it was really difficult because I could at least connect a little bit to it. But he was like, I don't understand why we're doing all these things. And, we decided that we would do certain ceremonies, but we would make it all about his life, his short life, and celebrate his life. And so we did do things very differently. We had a video montage of his 8 months showing up at his funeral. I carried his coffin in with my husband because I was like, I'm carrying my baby in. And usually it's men who carry in the coffin. And I was like, no, I'm doing it. And so my husband and I were the first ones at the beginning. And we played music that was comforting to us or reminded us of, when he was inside my tummy, or we used to play around the house and all that kind of stuff when he was born. And then I think I just started to sort of, after that, explore meditation to keep me a bit calmer and to reflect and express out everything that I was feeling, because I was feeling anger, trauma, deliriously being happy as well. And I couldn't understand that. I was like, how can I be happy if my son's just died? And so I really wasn't understanding, my emotions that were coming out. And then I found out I was pregnant with Kai almost the day after the funeral, after Shiva's funeral. So I was really questioning my faith in a big way. And so, it just got to the stage where I started to tap into and read about other people and how they had coped with things. And, it just made me realize that actually there was a much more bigger world out there, and there was more around spirituality than just what I had known, or I had been raised to know. And I feel like those parts started to help me cope better with things. So, for example, journaling and meditation and, going and sitting in the church by myself. And, initially I was like, am I even allowed to go into a church? Because I'm a Hindu, I'm not a Christian. And going into chapels and stuff like that. And I used to do all of it by myself because my husband was just not in that space at that time. We're very different. We, started to kind of do those moments. I started to do those moments myself, and I feel like that just exposed me to so much more, and it helped give me some of the answers, not all of them, but it just started opening up my world a bit more.
Okay, thank you. Are we okay with sound, Nana? Just checking. Yeah, thank you. Okay, Carol, do you want to let us know? Would you say closer or further away?
For me, it came in waves. I became Christian when I think it was 15 years old. So I built my relationship with God, and having been through so many things before, having experienced abuse as a child, and certain things that happened at school, my faith was anchored in God because he brought me through those situations. So when this came up now, I was like, the first initial thing me and my husband did in the hospital on the first day we found out was we called my pastor, Sonny Stewart, at the time. And we said, okay, we're going to pray that God will, do a miracle and bring the baby back. So we was praying, we was singing, we was worshiping, doing our thing. And on the third day after they induced me, God didn't bring the baby back. So I was like, okay, we had faith and you still didn't come through as God. So this is where I began to be a bit angry. And we gave birth to the baby. And after that, I would speak to my pastor, and then there'd be a bit more hope, and she would be like, just hold on, God's not through with you yet. He has good plans for you. And yeah, I'd be like, you know, whatever at the time, because it happened. I had faith, God never came through, so I lost faith again. And when we was on our way home, I don't know if you know the story of Noah's Ark, when there was the flood and then God showed the rainbow, and he promised them that he would never cause a flood to come again to destroy the people. Well, we was driving in the car and I saw a double rainbow. And I heard God say to me, I will never do this to you again, Carol. And that kind of gave me some peace. Try not to get too emotional, but
It's okay.
and that gave me peace, and was like, okay, God, because I needed that sign at the time. I needed that sign at the time, and it brought me comfort. So I think it was the Sunday after we went to church, and as a worship leader, we're taught not just to worship God when things are going good, but to worship Him when things are going bad as well. So we just praised. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, in the presence of God, there's fullness of joy. And as we began just to worship and think on the good things God has done for us and the things He's brought us through, we just began to feel a peace and a reassurance that He's got us, He's got us. And, you know, a few months went by, a few weeks went by, you know, people come to you and say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, I'm sorry for your loss. And sometimes you don't want to hear that all the time, you know, and I know people don't know how to react to you, but it got me more and more, don't want to use the word depressed, but in myself. And I found myself going back to that place of worship, that place of peace, and meditating on God's word. And yeah, just holding on to it. And there were times where I would turn to God and say, God, why did you do this? And it's the same thing as you. Why take me to 40 weeks and then take the baby away? But as I said before, we don't know why we go through certain things. Some things changes as a person. I think having the baby in my stomach and feeling him move really changed me as a person. That baby made us a parent, you know. It gave us the title mother. So we may never know the reasons why, but I trust that God wanted the best for us. And I remember one of our ministers came from Paris and said, look, because I wanted to throw all the baby clothes away. I didn't want to go in the nursery. I didn't want to see anything. And sorry. Okay. And she said, this time next year, God's going to give you the same. So, and a year later, we had our son. And I'm telling you, through that pregnancy, I was terrified. I was going to the hospital every minute to get checked on, and they induced me 37 weeks, and he was fine. So that again drew me closer to God, because I was like, you kept your promise to me, God. And then 2 years later, we went to have our daughter. She was so active, I didn't need to go to hospital once. She would not keep still. And now we have our son who's 7 and our daughter's 3. And my relationship with God is stronger because he was there, he brought us through. And how do I know he brought us through? I could have been dead, I could have committed suicide, but something in me says, no, Carol, there's still hope. You know, you've lost your baby. He's better off than you right now because the way the world is going, you know, but we don't believe in taking our own life, you know. And I never, because I believe that there was a purpose, and now there's 2 children in our life that need me and my husband. We need to be the best parent we can be for them. And I want to help encourage other women that are going through this, and husbands as well, because we both go through the same experience, but it's different at the same time. So to answer your question, I believe I'm stronger with God now.
Thank you. You both commented on something. So both of you mentioned anger, which I know I felt a lot of anger as well, and the questions as well. And you said something, Sheetal, about being truthful to yourself and being you didn't want to be a hypocrite. And I remember after my loss, during my loss, not even the pregnancy, I felt like a hypocrite because growing up, I'd always heard you can't have a baby out of wedlock. and I wasn't married, I didn't have a partner, and all of a sudden I'm in church and I'm pregnant. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, that is terrible already. I'm already doing the wrong thing. And when I look back, I think it was just so sad about how the whole thing was sad, but it was sad because I remember being pregnant, going to church and just feeling ashamed of that pregnancy because I was told you can't have a baby out of wedlock, can't have a baby. So I just felt so ashamed. I remember my sister saying, no, Tara, you should be clapping, you should be singing, you should be happy because you're having a baby. But I felt the opposite. And then of course, when I had my loss, I was just like, so I was ashamed when I was pregnant. Now I've had my loss and I'm ashamed again. And I just look back and I just think it was really sad that I carried that feeling of being like a hypocrite. And then when I did start, I was going to say start going back to church, I didn't really start going back to church for a long time. I didn't pray for a long time. And I remember when I did pray, it was just like, I love you, God, amen. And that was it for a long time. There was no conversation with me to a spiritual being, with me to anybody else about God. And whenever they did try to say the things, as you were saying, people said, oh, still like candles, and like, oh God, I was just shutting it down. I just did not want to hear anything about that whatsoever. And I remember when I finally did go back to church, I sat right at the back. I just didn't want to be near anybody. It's almost like I distanced myself from my faith. And then when I came back, I was still distant. So I can definitely resonate with the things that you both have been saying there. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, would you say, although you mentioned it when you were speaking about the funeral, was there any cultural rights or wrongs or spiritual rights or wrongs that you came across or that you dealt with? I'm just so mesmerized that you said that you and your husband took the coffin with your baby, and usually it would be a man, but you said, no, this is me. Was there any other things that you would say that you came across culturally, both of you, or spiritually, that you kind of said, I want to do it like this, or you want to do it like that, maybe?
There wasn't for me.
I think obviously within Ham culture, there's a certain number of days of mourning in that period, and usually what happens is there's no kind of entertainment stuff that goes on, like fun things that happen, or you don't celebrate the life necessarily of the person. You kind of turn to prayer and all that sort of stuff, so that we believe that the soul is still sort of like around the home for at least a number of days. And then there's a certain day where you do like a ceremony, and then eventually you release that soul to go into the next form of life. And I remember, during that time, when I've been to other sort of family sort of bereavements, or, to offer my condolences or things like that, there's not been a television on, there's been no radio that's been played, nobody's laughing or smiling, everyone's crying or very sad or very quiet. And everybody is singing kind of these specific prayers that you sing during that time when someone dies, whether that is a baby or an adult or an elderly person. And I remember a day or two later, people started to come around to the house. My husband and I were very, very different. I need people around me when I'm down. He is quite a private person, so he needs his own space. So he found it a little bit overwhelming that there was a lot of people around, whereas I found comfort in that. So then we kind of just said to people, we just come around in the evening because we need our time, together. And we also had an elder son who was 6.5 that had just lost his brother. So our biggest concern at that moment had turned to him and how we were going to manage our other son who'd lost his sibling. And he was old enough to understand my brother has died, and it was as clear cut as him saying those words. He used to say, my brother is dead. And it was just too shocking for us to hear that word dead or death or died. We couldn't bring ourselves to say that, not then. Now it's a different case because we've processed it, the emotion over so many years. But I just remember there were a number of women that came to our house, you know, elderly aunties and you know, very close people to us as well. And they started singing these songs. And I kind of looked, and I looked at my husband, and I knew what he was thinking. He definitely did not want those songs being sung. And he's a very polite person. Like he never openly expresses his views or anything like that. He's just such an easygoing person. And he went up to these two individuals in our family, very close to us, and he goes, I know why you're doing what you're doing, but please, could you just stop singing those songs, because it's making me more depressed.
Yeah.
And I know it's making Chantal feel even more depressed as well. And we can't hear those songs because we associate those songs with grief and death. And right now, this is our home. And in our home, we've had a loss. We know that. We know our son has died, but it's still Avi's home. And Avi's got to stay here for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And during this time, we don't want him to be tainted, that my home is a place of sadness. And so he stopped those songs. And then he was like, put the television on,
Wow.
watch CBeebies or Peppa Pig or whatever you want to watch, right? And he said to me, call Avi's friends and their mums and say to them that they can all come round with their children and they can just have play dates with him at home here. So just make it a place of kind of still laughter and happiness for him.
Yeah.
And we will continue to grieve in our own kind of way. And our compromise was this one, we call it a shanty bar. And we used to sing that every single day. Every single day we sang that, but it was just the one song, which is really, and it's, and shanty means peace. And Bart means prayer. So it's a peace prayer. So we said that peaceful prayer for us and for Ksavi's kind of soul and his memory. And that was our sort of compromise. And I think that was the start of, we didn't realize we were doing this, but that was the start of educating our family on, because somebody in our family has died, we don't necessarily have to do it the way that it's always been done. You can change things. So we, you know, at the funeral we had, like I was saying, that we had this lovely video montage of Ksavi, and you know, the music that we had in the background was Bob Marley, Three Little Birds, because I always used to think of, you know, the three miscarriages in that kind of way. And it was the first song that I heard when I got back into the car after we had gone to the crematorium to sort out all his kind of, you know, final sort of departure service and all that sort of stuff. And it was the one song that I heard, and so we had that in the background playing, and you know, that is the song that I always kind of go back to, that everything, little things gonna be all right, right? That those words are ingrained in my memory now.
Yeah.
And every time I hear it, I always feel like it's come on for a reason, like there's something that I've been thinking that day or whatever. And even now, you know, 5 years ago, when it was his 50th anniversary, my mother-in-law had passed away that year. My father-in-law, he was entering into what we call the forefathers shrub period, you know, so it was 3 years after he died. It was a big moment, you know, Ksavi would have been 5 years old that year. And it was COVID, so we did a virtual kind of prayer session. But I didn't go back to those songs. I went back to more upbeat versions of it, and asked the live band to sort of like sing upbeat versions of certain songs that we wanted. And then we mixed in Bollywood music, then we mixed in sort of like, you know, modern English music that had just connected us to him and that remind us of him. And I feel, you know, my mum especially, my mum is 70 years old, you know, she's quite a traditionalist, you know, she's grown up with, she's a strong person in the family, you know, she's like the person that holds everybody together kind of thing. And breaking through to her and saying to her, Mum, this is not what we want to do, we want to do it this way. You know, she almost like let her guard down, because she didn't know how to cope with losing a grandchild, and she didn't know also how to cope with her child losing her child, right? And so she was kind of searching for her own answers, and you know, she is the second mom to my children, so she grieved just like me and my husband grieved, you know, and was distraught about it. And I think almost I'm pretty sure she's probably questioned her faith as well. She's never told me that, but I think she's become a little bit more easier about life, and we must do this and we must do that and like she's just a bit more chilled out about things. And you know, like you were saying, that you turn to your faith because you don't know anything else but that, right? And you know, when you know, as a couple, when you're going through something like this, you know, you're looking for that support in each other, but we're both broken. We're both broken, and then we're trying to support another child that has been, and when two broken parents are trying to support another sort of like child, it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And so the thing that kind of brought me back to my spirituality was knowing that there is a being up there. I don't call that being anymore this person or that person or, you know, God, or I don't think about them as a male or anything like that. I just believe there is a being, and that bigger being helps to guide us through certain parts of our life. And I remember when I turned to sort of like meditation and spirituality, I went to like this guided meditating session, and I was so new into the journey, I didn't even know what was happening. But they went around and they asked everybody if they wanted to share what kind of came up for them during that session. And so I described this moment, and I said, well, I saw this moment where Ksavi's face was the sun, and I was walking through this beautiful place, but it was all in black and white. And then I saw a bridge, and I had my husband, my mum, dad, and everybody behind me, and they were almost like pushing me onto this bridge because the sun was kind of guiding me through where I had to walk, and he was guiding me to walk over the bridge. And as I started walking over the bridge started changing into a colourful rainbow. Oh, wow. So every step I kept taking, it kept changing. And all of a sudden I was surrounded by all these people that I didn't even know, but I just knew they were bereaved parents. I knew that. This was years before my connection with Sands happened. Wow. And then the person that was leading the session said to me, you've had a shamanic experience here, and that is what you should, I think that's what it's called. I think you should continue and take that vision forward. And, you know, then talking about baby loss, and like, you know, no one ever thinks that, you know, I'm going to become an ambassador for Sands, and this is what my life's going to be, and I'm going to be on this talk today, you know, doing this for all these other people. And, you know, none of us expected we would be doing what we're doing here today. We just do what we have to do to help us heal and to cope and just to get us through life, because every day is hard to get out of bed. I'm sure you had that moment where you just never wanted to wake up, you know, and you didn't want to get out of bed, and you didn't want to get dressed, and you didn't want to cook for anybody, you didn't want to open the door to anybody or go to work. And that, I feel the spirituality part of my life and the connection back to the spiritual being has been to help me get out of bed and feel like my life is now more purposeful and is more worth kind of doing everything that I do. And Tara, I think I told you this when we were talking pre this session, that I always have this vision that when I get to the gates of heaven and I knock on that door and those open and Ksavi comes to greet me, he's going to say, what did you do with your life, Mum? Yeah. And I need to have a solid answer for him. So that drives me a lot in, you know, present day, future, and that gets me through a lot.
You said so many amazing things. One of the things that you were saying, it reminded me after your loss, and me, you and your husband were sat near the window, and you was in a wheelchair, and everyone was just so down, as you would be. And I remember Carol saying something like, I don't want to see any down miserable faces. Because we was just all like, you know, really down. And at the time, you did not want to be around that. So when I went home and when I came back the following day, or when I was getting ready to come back to see you, I was like, I've got to do my makeup. And I was just making sure that I just looked really, I don't know, just like was looking after myself. I don't know if it was that kind of thing that you didn't really want to. As you were saying, if everybody around you is down, then sometimes that can just make you feel even more down. And I remember Carol's husband saying to me, oh, you look nice, Tara. And I was like, yeah, I know. And I caught myself. And I was like, okay, I'm not that vain, but I just definitely remember wanting to make an effort to not be really down around you. And I know that sometimes if you're supporting someone who's had a loss, if it's your partner or your best friend or a relative, sometimes it can feel a bit like, I don't know what to do or how to be around them. Is there anything that you would say? And even, I know it sounds a bit basic sometimes to say do's and don'ts, but sometimes there are some things that's probably not the best thing to say, especially surrounding faith. I remember you got some flowers after your loss from a very well-meaning Christian lady, but there was a note in the card, and whatever it said on the note, you was just like, no, that's just not what I want to hear right now. Maybe, I don't know, something like, and I definitely wanted, if there's time to discuss, it's God's will, because that's something that can be said in these kind of circumstances. I think it was something to that effect that somebody said. And it was well-meaning with some flowers. Can you remember?
I don't know if it was something like never mind. I don't remember if it was something outrageous. I don't remember.
Is there any kind of do's or don'ts or anything that you think or advice that you can give to people who's supporting someone who's had a loss?
I had quite a few, to be honest, and those are things I talk about quite actively, that please don't say that, you know. So I think, you know, that addressing this God's will, when someone says that to you, it's really the wrong thing to say. Do not say that to a bereaved parent, because, you know, where Karen and I have found that strength now in our own gods or our own beings or our own spirituality, that's for us to decide and to come to terms with, and that's not for anybody else to dictate to us. And it's really unhelpful when you're questioning why things have happened. So, you know, I mean, that's certainly, and I, you know, unfortunately, I even had that up to a month ago. I had somebody say that to me. And yeah, this is somebody who's seen my whole baby loss journey, and it's still not penetrating, through that. You know, don't say that kind of thing. And that's why it's so important for us to keep saying these are some of the things not to say. Yeah. The other thing I think as well is that I had certainly was, people said to me, you know, when they found out I was pregnant, oh, don't wash your hair because you're not supposed to wash your hair. And you know, when I did wash my hair, because I wanted to wash my hair, I was going to work and all that kind of stuff. I was like, I can't have, you know, horrible hair or anything. I need to look good, you know, and I need to feel good, because, you know, my pregnancies were not easy. They were not easy, and I was full of fear, because other people had put that fear into me that don't do this because this is going to happen, don't do that because that will happen. I think, you know, just don't be like that to people. You know, you don't need to say those things. They're really, really unhelpful. And I think the other thing that I would say maybe to a bereaved person is, and I've said it quite a lot, did you have a special name for your baby, or did you name your baby? Because most bereaved parents want to talk about their baby, and they never are given that opportunity or that chance. And so it's kind of, you know, I remember asking somebody on Friday, this person reached out to me, and I said, did you have a special name for your baby? And she had to have a medical termination because they had found out some things and stuff. And, you know, and she told me the baby's name and, you know, or the special name that they had for the baby. And that was, and you could just see her face just lit up the moment I asked her that question. So, you know, you can kind of, pulse check the temperature of, you know, that bereaved person, but don't say anything unhelpful, and maybe turn it around with something different. You know, the other one that I had, some people saying to me was, at least you've got one. And I was like, gosh, you know, every baby is special to you. So when you lose that baby, you know, another baby doesn't compensate for that. Definitely they not. Don't, you know, you still, you know, I've gone on to having Kai, and I still remember the 3 that I've miscarried, and I still remember Shivai immensely. If not, you know, I can't categorize how many times I think about them, but it's a lot. It's a lot.
We're
I
just
was
going
gonna
to
say
go.
that I have
Hold
one.
that thought one moment. We're just going to go for a short break. So get your teas and your coffees and make yourself comfortable. We'll be back probably in about 3-4 minutes or so. Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience with us. So before we had a short break, Carol had something she was going to share with us.
Yeah, just on your point on what not to say, one of the things I got was people kept telling me to be strong. And I don't think it's possible to be strong when you go through something like that. You have to go through different periods of grief. You know, it's going to be periods where you're angry, you're up, you're down, you're sad. So yeah, I just wanted to just put that out there for those that don't know what to say. To be strong is not one of them. And also those of you that feel like you need to be strong, allow yourself to experience the emotions you need to heal.
That's okay, thank you. I can remember myself and my sister, when we were born here, but our parents are Jamaican. And one of the things I can remember an older Jamaican person saying is when you're pregnant, you shouldn't take photographs. So I was really scared of doing that. And I remember there was a friend's birthday and it was, oh, let's all take photographs. So then I was in the picture. I found it hard to kind of say no to this photograph. And then, of course, when I had my loss, I did, even though I know it might sound ridiculous, but I did think to myself, was it because of that photograph? Because I didn't take any pictures during the pregnancy, apart from this picture for a friend's birthday. And then, of course, I had my loss. And I couldn't help just put it back to that. So I definitely know there were lots of different cultural do's, don'ts, you have to do this. And now I think to myself, in this social media age, everybody's taking photographs of themselves pregnant. And why shouldn't you? It's an amazing thing. So I do just look back and think I shouldn't have restricted myself in that way. But then I realize and can definitely hear from the things that you're saying that it does take a strength to be able to say, actually, no, we're not going to do it like that, or yes, we want to do it like this. And I think what's good is realizing that everybody's journey is unique. So some people might want to do it this way, and that's fine. And some people might not want to do it that way, and that's fine too. I don't think there's any right or wrong. It's just about what's unique and specific for you.
Yeah.
Would you say there was can you remember how long it was before you went back into the church building? Because I remember with your pregnancy, because Carol was leading worship. So, I mean, did people even say anything to you about Carol wore heels? I can even remember people saying, don't wear heels when you're pregnant.
Kitten heels, not high, kitten small.
So was there anything like, how was that going back? Because you were leading on a public platform singing while you was pregnant, and then you had your loss. So how was that for you?
No one said anything about me then. It was when I was pregnant the second time, there was like, okay, you're not going to sing at this stage of your pregnancy in case something happens. And
was that people in church?
Yeah, people in the church. So I don't know if they thought maybe it's because I was still singing. Who knows? Nobody knows why it happened. But yeah, I don't think there was too much of that. There was, yeah, I was thinking, no. Someone was saying maybe people touched your belly as well along the line, and that day. Who touched my belly is called just.
Did you believe that, or did
you?
Yeah,
I believed it actually. I was like, you know, it made me suspicious. You know, who around me is not for me. It's just not helpful to say things like that at all. But yeah, in terms of singing, I didn't really get much comments.
And for both of you, would you say that there's anything specific that people in leaderships relating to specific faiths can do to help and to support people? Because I don't know, is it appropriate for there to be a teaching on baby loss, or I don't know if that has to be publicly, or maybe just to people who are in leadership in mosques or churches or temples or wherever? Is there anything that you think people can do to support?
I think there's a massive piece of education and training that can be tapped into all those faith leaders and community members, or, you know, key members within the community around sort of bereavement in general. And then also obviously specifically baby loss, because I think there's a lot of people within the community that turn to these individuals during when, you know, they've experienced baby loss or they've experienced the death of someone, you know, that is classed as an adult. So I think they have a massive opportunity where they can share the correct information, the correct support services that are available, and, you know, be helpful in the way that they sort of articulate some of these conversations around death and baby loss. So I think there's a massive opportunity. I don't think we're there yet with it. I think there's a huge potential of kind of like supporting them through that. And I think, you know, a lot of them are starting to become very aware of kind of these conversations, and charities like Sands, who's willing to kind of support them through this. And you know, we've certainly, ever since I've become an ambassador, we've been doing a lot of work around the South Asian community around sort of like reflecting on you know, key dates in the diary that are relevant for us, and using the opportunity to tell people about, you know, the services that are available through Sands and stuff like that. So, for example, within the Hindu calendar, there's a month of Shraddh, and that Shraddh is dedicated to any person that has passed away. And there's a set day for a male or a female or a baby or, you know, a friend. And those are massive opportunities where we can talk about all these services that are available. We can educate these community leaders. We can educate kind of faith leaders. And I think, you know, I definitely am starting to see that there are faith leaders that are openly coming to us now saying, I don't know what to say and how to kind of have that conversation. What can you do to kind of help with that? So I think the dialogue is starting. We're nowhere near where we need to be. So I think, and we should kind of, you know, take opportunity in that. I think conversations like this are really important as well, because just generally kind of educating people that have been touched by bereavement, not necessarily been the bereaved parent, but maybe a family member, like them listening to conversations like this around maybe the do's and don'ts, you know, it just helps them to understand what they should say or how they can be of support to somebody within their network that might have been bereaved. So I think, you know, there's so much, and unfortunately it's not, we get to this stage and then we start doing something else. I think just keep repeating the same message all the time in different ways and shapes and forms, because it's still, you know, there's still lots for people to learn and do around it.
What do you think, Carol?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said. I think there needs to be some more awareness for the leaders in the church, because it's not always a spiritual answer, because it's a natural thing that happens to us. So we need to go through a natural process. So there should definitely, I think most churches now have a counselling department, but we really need trained counsellors, or as you said, maybe work with organizations like Sands, try to like Sands, because spiritual is not enough. I think you need both.
Definitely holistic. And sometimes, as I said, if you already have questions about your faith, then you might not necessarily want to engage in a kind of a spiritual aspect early on in your loss. So yeah, I think definitely having some kind of training or something with community leaders as well. I remember when I had my loss, there was two pastors who was amazing, a male and a female pastor, who were very supportive. But I get it was a very unique and specific thing to me, because I already had a relationship with them. And then maybe if there was another member in the congregation who had that loss, it might have been something completely different if they had support at all. So I definitely think awareness in general with faith leaders and community leaders, because even to be able to reach the different types of people as well, we're talking about this now and we're going through this now. And I remember saying to you that, or you saying to me, should I say rather, that people who are older aren't necessarily called upon to do talks like this, but they still have their stories too, and they're still going through their loss as well, especially at a time when miscarriage, stillbirth, when it just wasn't even spoken about. And I was at an event earlier this year where I was speaking, and one lady was saying that for her it's a case of, you've had your loss, okay, carry on with life. Back then,
really
so exactly. So I definitely think it is important for faith leaders, for community leaders as well, to be educated and an openness to be aware of it. But I think there is more of an openness now, would you
There
say?
is more,
Definitely, there's some.
but there's still more.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it. You know, it would be wonderful to be in a world with no baby dies, right, and no parent has to go through this. But you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to see that in my lifetime. So whilst I'm here, hopefully I can make it a better world for my children and their children. You know, and hopefully they don't have to go through anything like this, and other people. But you know, I think it's really, really important that it's really important to sort of, you know, kind of comfort those people that have lost babies years ago, and the work that we do, you know, now, all of us, I'm sure we experience many more people that have lost babies 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, who are only feeling more comfortable to share that kind of conversation. I feel like more people connect to me because I've been talking about it now. And there's a different level of communication and human interaction, you know, that they feel that they can talk to me about it, but maybe not talk to their closest. You know, the baby loss community absolutely has held me through so much, and I've made some incredible friendships through it. None of us wanted to be part of this community. You know, we didn't set out for that. We didn't want to be a part of this club. We all thought, you know, there was a different future that was planned for us. But here we are. And I think, you know, just the reason that I do so many talks like this now is because I know after I've done it, there'll be an influx of messages from people that have either heard our story or have never had support. And now is the right time for them to maybe access it, or maybe reach out to one of us and, you know, try and get that comfort. And, you know, even through Way of Light, you see it all the time, right? When you're at the ceremonies and it's just, there is this common thread that goes through all of us, but we all come from different cultures and backgrounds and different levels of spirituality and different types of baby loss as well. But what holds us all together is we're in it together, and we're supporting each other through that journey, and almost like it's a stranger holding you up through it. And that gives me a lot of comfort, actually, and it also heals a lot of part of my grief, and Shivi not being there, and the other babies never being able to see, you know, who they would have been or what that future would have looked like. With being, I always categorize myself as a mum of three, you know, and a mum of three babies whose heartbeats I never heard. But I always imagine, like, what would that future look like with three boys, you know? And you know, I just can't bring myself to sort of really understand it, because I'm not going to be in that situation now. So yeah.
And one thing I'm thinking about as well, what's important is when you get pregnant again, you're definitely going to need support with that, because I was like, I'm not going to say it was just as bad, but the fear and anxiety was high. So we need that support with the leaders when we're going through the grieving, but when we get pregnant again as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We're just going to go now to a video from one of the co-founders of Black Mums Up Front, Nanachua. She is a Catholic and she wants to be a part of today. So she's got a few things that she's going to say to us.
Hello, sorry I'm not able to join you today, but I really did want to still be a part of this Sunday tea. And well, my name is Nanachua Butcher. I am co-founder of Black Mums Out Front, and very importantly, I am a mother as well. And I, perhaps like you, have lost a baby before. And so in line with the theme of today, thinking about whether pregnancy and baby loss can sit alongside spirituality and faith, I would have to say, hand on my heart, most certainly yes. For me, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Christian, and there was no way that I could comprehend what happened to me 4 years ago if I wasn't able to lean upon my faith. I had to pray. I had to try and seek answers. I had to get annoyed as well. I remember at one point thinking, Lord, what was the point of that pregnancy? Like, I can understand if you've got to the end of the pregnancy, you've birthed a baby, maybe baby lives for a year, 2, 20, whatever it is, and then your child sadly passes away because they've obviously made an impact and they've had a purpose in this world and everything. But I was saying, God, why bring me halfway through a pregnancy only for the baby to die? Like, what really was the point of that? And that was a big question that I had to grapple with. And I don't know if I still 100% hand on my heart know the answers to that. But for me, personally, I realized I don't actually need to know, because I've allowed myself to get into a position where I can feel the blessing. I can feel the truth. I guess I can kind of feel the answer. So I never really lost my faith. I certainly had questions. I certainly asked why. But I would have been so lost had I not been able to open up scripture, to go to mass, to pray with my family, to have my daughter, who was 4 at the time, actually put her hand on my stomach and say, Mummy, can I pray that the baby will come alive again? This was before I had gone into labor. And I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't want to discourage her, because prayer is powerful. But I also didn't want her to lose hope if it didn't happen. But I figured, if that is her way of dealing with it, who am I to say no? So she put her hand on my tummy and she prayed whatever little prayer that she could pray from deep down in her heart. The baby didn't come alive again, but she used her faith and she had hope. And she knows where her younger sister is now. And she talks about her almost every day. And she loves her. And we all do. And someone once said to me, your baby was formed just enough to resemble you when she stands there before God, praying for her mum and her dad and her siblings. So I pray that from whatever background you are from, spiritually, religiously, or perhaps still searching or none, that you are able to also find a sense of peace, warmth, and perhaps a blessing in what it is you have been through. And I asked God, please may this not have happened for nothing. Use me. Use this experience, because I know I'm not the only one who has been through it. So, Lord, give me the strength. Be my words, guide me, so that I can use this experience to enhance myself, bless others, and to just experience life in all its ups and downs.
Special thanks to Nanajua there for sharing that video. We are going to go to a time of Q&A now, so please feel free to put questions in the chat, questions to Laurie directly or to myself. I have a few questions as well, which we're going to put to Sheetal and to Carol as well. In the video with Nanajua, there were quite a few things that came up. Again, common questions, people to ask questions. So I think for anybody out there who has had a loss, experienced baby loss, that questions are natural, questions are human. I know sometimes we can feel bad for asking questions and for questioning, but I don't think that's a bad thing. And I even think that sometimes that can help you go on to find whatever the pieces that you need, or to go on to heal as well. The other thing is people might want to talk about afterlife, because that's something that's come up as well. What is everybody's beliefs regarding that? And do you find comfort in that? And I can remember when starting Mothers of Angels, a question came through, why Mothers of Angels, do angels even exist? And I thought to myself, oh yes. But then actually I did a lot of research into that, but also research into other people who have experienced loss. And what I found is that people who were openly not engaging in any faith still believed that their baby was an angel, or they still believed in angels. So I felt actually that that is something that's quite universal. But again, that's my point of view. So feel free to put in the chat and to ask questions regarding that. I do have one question which came in for Sheetal. As a South Asian woman having experienced baby loss, what advice would you give to someone to go about having an honest discussion with family about how deeply hurt they are over the loss of their baby?
I would first of all say that, do that conversation when you're ready for it, not when it's dictated by other people, for you to have that conversation. And I think, that will come. You'll know when that time is. I certainly had so many emotions going on, and I just tapped into those emotions and allowed myself to sit with them. I remember somebody saying to me, a really good friend of mine, actually, and it was the most helpful advice I got from her. And she was like, don't feel offended if you feel angry. Like, don't feel like you can't be angry, and don't feel like you can't be tearful when you want to be tearful, or don't feel like you can't be happy. Like, don't feel guilty for being happy either at a certain time. Like, just, there's no rush to get through that emotion quickly. So just sit with it and just allow it to do whatever it needs to do. Journaling was a massive part of my life. That was probably the thing that got me connected back into my spirituality. I started journaling and writing how I was feeling, and that almost helped me process things. And I would look back at that like 2 days later after I'd had that moment of being angry, and looking back at it and reading, gosh, that's how I was feeling. Like, I almost couldn't recognize myself like 2 days later or something like that. And then I changed my opinion. I was feeling like I was in a different space that day. But then the next day I might be angry again, sort of thing. So I would allow myself to sit with the emotion and feel what I had to feel. And then I started having that conversation, with my nearest and my dearest first. And that for me was my mum, dad, my brother, my husband, because even my husband, although we had experienced this grief together, he was so different from me. And I felt like the communication between us had just dropped. He was not communicating to me because he thought I was going to feel really sad and more down about everything that had happened. I was not having that conversation with him because I felt like he's already quite quiet, he's not really opening up to me and that kind of thing. So I felt like we were, sorry, we're on the phone. I felt like we weren't, able to kind of have that conversation. So I think, before sort of taking that conversation to the bigger extended family, just make sure you're okay first, and support yourself through what you need to support yourself through. If your partner or if you have other children, that's the priority. Support each other through that, and start that open kind of communication if you can. Allow it to come when it comes naturally to you. There might be some really difficult conversations that you need to have there, and I remember I had very difficult conversations with my husband, but it was also the start of we'd already been married kind of 10 years by that point, but I feel like I'm more connected to my husband now after the loss because of those difficult conversations, and they are really hard. They're really, really hard. And then I think when you are both kind of in a level playing field, maybe that's the point to have that conversation. If you feel comfortable, it doesn't have to be a big massive group of people. It could be just maybe one person at a time, and and then you can kind of share how hurt you were feeling and stuff like that. And I remember having some really difficult conversations with my mum. That was the tough one, right? Was my dad he just accepted it and he was quiet, in some ways, whereas my mum was, I was kind of like questioning her faith. And then she didn't like that, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do that, Mum, because where does that come from? Oh, because we've always done it, because this auntie and that auntie told me to do it like this. Well, no, I'm not going to do it like that, because that doesn't feel right to me, Mum. And so, I was going up against, the pillar of the family. Really, that was quite tough. But I feel like, looking back, as a family, we're much more deeply connected now. I think we're much more aware of each other, and we also back off as well. We give each other their own space in different kind of ways. It's a really tough one. It's a really tough one, but just support yourself through it first.
Yes, thank you. We're going to go to Naomi now from Life Care Counselling, who's got some self-care practices for everyone. Hi, Naomi, are you good? You can come off mute.
You might prefer me to stay on mute, actually, but there you go. Thank you, ladies. So there's been some really, really interesting and really pertinent life experiences, I think, from both of you. So thank you. And I resonate with so many of the things that you have spoken about to what I see in my practice in counselling. Both mums and dads. I do both. Both couples together and individually, and trying to meet those needs of parents. So thank you. I think this is, there's not a magic wand. God, how great would it be if there was? So there's not a magic wand to this. But I think as mums, once we've lost our baby, we have to really recognise, or it's really important to recognise, actually, what do I need at this moment in time? And I think there's not many times in your life that you can be selfish, but one of these are definitely, be selfish and kind of just recognise the time you might need, the space you might need. I know meditation's been spoken lots about. You just might need to, get out for an hour, but just to kind of really give yourself that time and that space, and to remember your baby how you want to remember them. And how do you want to honour your baby? Ask yourself that question. How do I want to honour my baby? How do I want to remember my baby? Is there something significant that you would like to do? And whether that's religious or not religious, whether that's anything to do with faith or not, or spirituality or not. So there's some really nice things, isn't there? Like, maybe planting a special tree or a plant for your baby. Maybe there's some special place that you always imagined that you would go to have a really good time with your baby. And that might be to the beach. It might be to, a special family place for you. It might be to the park, but just give yourself that time, I think, to go there and to have those moments and to make those memories. You know, this is time for you to make memories with your baby and the memories that you have of your baby. You know, journaling, I kind of, you know, Ksavi, you mentioned journaling really helped for you, and I think that can help for lots of us mums. There's something quite cathartic as well, I think, about writing on paper rather than just, you know, tapping away on your phone. There's something quite different about writing your thoughts and your feelings down. And I think that sometimes it can be quite helpful to write to our babies. You know, tell them you're having a really bad day today. I'm having, you know, I miss you and I love you, and I'm having some really bad moments. But it's okay to do that, and it's personal just to you and your baby. And some mums really find it helpful to keep those notes, to put them in their memory boxes if you have a memory box for your baby, or if not, maybe you want to create a memory box for your baby. But to keep those moments. There might be a photo that you want to put in there of that special place, or of their special tree, or their birthday cards, or you know, whatever feels right for you, I think is the most important. And I think, you know, the theme through all of this conversation is it's really hard, isn't it, to justify why we lose our babies. You know, can we really justify it? We lose faith over it, we lose friendships over it, our personal relationships change, our personal friendships change, and I don't know how it's going to change you. I don't know that. And I often say to my mums, you know, I don't know how losing your baby is going to change you, but the one thing that I do know is that it will change you as a person, because that's what life experiences do to us. Life experiences make us who we are. They're unique to us. And so even though the common theme here is that we have all lost babies at different ages and stages, etc., it has changed us. It's changed us as a person. So sometimes it's worth thinking about, how has it changed me? Who am I now? You know, who am I now that I'm a mum? What kind of different woman am I? Do I think about things differently? Do I value life differently? Do I value parts of my life differently? Do I value friendships differently? And actually, what am I grateful for in that? Obviously, you're not grateful that you've lost a baby. None of us are. But are you grateful that you are becoming a different person from who you were before?
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for that. Did you both do anything specifically to honour your babies during the loss? Any kind of, you spoke about journaling as well. Did you journal, Carol, or did you kind of have a special place to go to?
No, I mean, I was in the middle of writing a song while I was pregnant called Hold On, and I didn't get to finish that song. But I would say a few months after losing the baby, this is when the bridge came for the song. So every time I sing that song wherever I go, I always talk about Fidel, whose name was our baby, and just encourage other people that's hearing that song just to hold on. That's what the song's called.
Okay, great, thank you. And we didn't have the chance to touch this so much in terms of professional support. I know after my loss, I was in counselling for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And it's something that the NHS offered to me as well. So I definitely would encourage people to seek counselling or other kinds of therapies if that's something that you would be interested in, or something that you might think would help. Did you go to talk to a counsellor, or was that helpful for you at the time? Or?
Yeah, I did talk to a counsellor. It took me a while, if I'm honest, because our priority was our son first. So our own individual counselling sort of almost happened a year after when Kai was born, because I wouldn't allow myself to go to talking about anything until he was born, and I knew he was going to be safe, or so to say, in my own kind of mind. But I felt counselling helped me only in that moment when I was actually doing the counselling, and when I came away from the counselling, when I was having these moments of feeling angry or being triggered, like there was nothing for me to turn to, and I went to talk to my doctor about that, and some of the stuff that he had suggested to me was not helpful, like using tablets and antidepressants, and I was like, no, my son has already lost his sibling. I need to get to a stage where he's not going to lose his mother, you know, and my husband's not going to lose his wife, you know, and you know, I was really driven by that fact. And that's what made me tap more back into the meditation stuff. And actually what I did was I revisited my childhood, my happiest moments in my childhood. And what I found was there was a spiritual place I used to go to with my grandma, and in Watford, and you know, it's all about consciousness. So I started going back to that spiritual place, not with any intention, but just going, and just I remember sort of thinking back to like really happy moments as a child, and that's when I started connecting back to my spirituality. So I almost went back 30 years to when I was really happy as a child and when life was not so difficult.
And for you, Carol, did you do counselling after your loss? Yes, no.
Not in the beginning, because I didn't want to remember it. I remember I had one session and I was just sitting there not talking. I laugh about it now, but at the time I just wasn't ready for it. So I went through the beginning with support from family and the church. And then if I felt like I wanted to acknowledge it actually happened, then I had some counselling a bit later down the line.
Thank you. So it definitely sounds like it's to appreciate that it might not be a straight away kind of thing, and that's okay. Some people might want to go into it straight away. I think I did wait a few months, but that was due to being on a waiting list. I waited a few months, but at the end of the session, which we are coming to very soon, we realised we've gone over a little bit. So thank you so much for being with us. We do have some charities and organisations which we have the details of, which we'll share with you. Just before closing, there was one question that did come through, which I'd just like to address now, and that was for Carol. The person in the question has asked, could you kind of talk a bit about how your relationship was with your husband during the process of grief? So Ksavi mentioned, or Sheetal, sorry, mentioned how that was with her. Would you talk a little bit about that with yourself?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, it's like you're in, I'm sure you'll know, you're just in a world on your own, you're in a daze. And we both went through the same experience, but again, it was separate. And there may have been times where I forgot that he was actually going through as well, because I'm the one that carried the baby. But I soon remember the case, both of us going through this. And as you were saying before, you didn't want to go to him and put too much on him. And he felt the same. He felt the same. I think he felt the same. Don't speak too much for him. But yeah, I mean, there was arguments, and sometimes the arguments wasn't anything to do with the baby. You know, it was a tough time. Something like this can either pull you apart or bring you together. And for us, because we knew that the love was there, the faith was there, we just have to acknowledge, okay, we're both hurting right now. We need to just push through together. I definitely recommend counselling together and counselling separately, because we both process things differently as a woman and a man. But yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing, roses all the time. Sometimes I would have an outburst. But it's grief, it's a process. I think if you ever have an outburst with your husband or just get angry at him, as soon as you realize, okay, I'm going through grief right now, apologizing can help. And the reason why I say apologizing can help is because you have to manage your feelings, but your other partner who's gone through the same thing as you don't want to make them more, I don't want to say more depressed, but it's hard to explain. Help me out.
I think it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's that communication,
Yeah,
like if you're
communication,
struggling at
yeah.
that time and you're just not in a great place, I think it's important to tell your partner
Communication,
that, you know what, I'm really struggling right now, like basic things like
Yeah.
getting out of bed and
Yeah.
head to work, or you know, just being able to comfort you. I just haven't got it in me right now
Yeah.
because I'm in a really difficult place. Like I don't feel like, I remember there was moments where I didn't feel like I loved myself,
Yeah.
so I couldn't love somebody else at that point in time or show them that love. And what I remember realizing is I needed to show myself that love first
Yeah.
before I could pour it out and comfort somebody else. And I think it's important just to, if they know that you're not in a good place, then they know where maybe that argument's come from,
Yeah.
or that, you know, outbursts has come from. Because actually, like you said, it's not related to anything else. It could be about the
Yeah.
dishes, right? It's about washing up or something.
Exactly.
But actually, it's something that's going on in the background for you.
Yeah, definitely the communication is there. So as long as they understand, you know, you're going to be going through your emotions and you understand they're going through theirs, I think you'll be okay. Communication.
Thank you. And
Sorry,
again,
I've
thank
gone
you to everybody. I'm aware that we've run over time. Is it possible? I think some of the support has been listed in the chat. Do we have the slides still at all? Not sure. Okay, we're going to see if we still have the slides regarding some of the support groups, although it has been put in the chat. Before we go, a massive thank you to Sheetal and to Carol for being with us. Are you able to, great, we've got the slides. Are you able to kind of let people know how they can find you on social media or how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. I have to check. My name is Carol_Bertogal. I don't know if you can get it in the chat, and you can find me there. Also, I have my songs on YouTube. If you put Carol Bertogal in, all my songs will come up if you just want to have a listen. It might bring you some comfort and encouragement.
And Sheetal, how can people find you?
Yeah, they can find me through Instagram. I'm down as Ksavi Joshi, that's with a K at the beginning. Or there's also like a dedicated page for Ksavi, which is called Ksavi's Rainbow, that they can find me through. Or alternatively, get in touch with the Sands team, and they can get you in touch with me.
Perfect. Thank you again. We've got the information up on the screen now. Thank you as well to Naomi for joining us and giving us some self-care practices. Thank you to Sarah from East Kent Sands as well. Sands do have a variety of support groups all over the UK, so you can get in touch and you can connect with other women who have experienced pregnancy and baby loss that way, if that's something that you think you would like to do. And again, just a massive thank you. I always say this every time, but I just think that women who have experienced this kind of loss and are still going every day are absolutely amazing. And I just think you shouldn't judge yourself regarding the progress that you make. Getting up out of bed after a loss is a massive progress. Going to work is a massive progress. Deciding, actually, I don't want to work anymore, it's still progress. It's all acknowledging your feeling, and just keeping on going, really. So a massive thank you to you all. I think you're amazing. I think you're amazing. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.